Hello from me, hello from him. Today we're going to do 40 minutes, so it's a bit of a step up. We're going to do standing for 40 minutes, standing pole. As we've been building step by step. I remember myself, doing 2 minutes and that being like a nightmare, and then 2 minutes 30 being a really big achievement. And your ability to do longer and longer gets better and better as you go on, obviously, just like with any exercise. We're going to work on some pretty interesting the visualization is simple, but some of the postures we want to do are interesting. So the visualization we want to use in old Yiquan, you used to have this idea of a cast. I think we've talked about it before, like a mold that you would pour molten metal in. It's just like all these metaphors, like they're not esoteric, they're not mystical. It's the metaphors themselves that make your point an expectation that there's something more than they really are. Wang Shengjia himself talks about this, the immortal flying swordsman and things like that. We'll use a slightly different metaphor because what it's trying to get across is the idea of like being like a solid outer case and there's something kind of fluid inside that's moving. And that's trying to get you to a very specific kind of feeling where you move and you feel like you're kind of locked in, but you can just move slightly, imperceptibly. So anyone watching, for the most part, would hardly even see you move. Although you can make the posture a little bit bigger. And let's think about it a different way. You know those old movies with Buster Keaton or something like that, where he's had an accident and he's broken every bone in his body. And he's in a full plaster cast suit with just the eye holes and the mouth. He's got to be fed with a straw. Think of something like that, and we're gonna do this kind of forward lateral zhuang or mysterious zhuang. We're gonna do that posture. So imagine yourself like Buster Keaton trapped in that plaster cast, and you can just move slightly within it, and you start feeling, well, can I move? Imagine like if you want to start exercising, you're in that plaster cast and you think, well, I like training martial arts, I'm going to start building my strength. How do I do it? I can't even move. Aha, we have the perfect exercise for you. It's Yiquan. And so you start just trying to move slightly within it. And, visualize little bits of the plaster crumbling off inside as you move. And that's trying to get across a sense of a feeling. So that feeling is, I've said before, it's the exact same feeling of when we hit and we truncate a movement and hit to the lock point. It's that exact same feeling. It's just trained from a different angle. So we're building that ability. And the next thing is something we haven't really looked at. Well, we have looked at it, but I haven't explicitly talked about it. And it's the idea of dynamic weightedness. I'm not really going to get into that because it's quite a complex skill. And I think if you can't do it, you don't understand it. So really all of each one is like this. You kind of have to do it to be able to understand it. But Yiquan wrote quite an interesting essay about it. You can maybe find on the internet. And the idea, very simply, is that in traditional martial arts, there's an idea of single weightedness and double weightedness. And Yiquan says, well, in each one we're after something much more dynamic. The shift between single and double weightedness. And it's exactly what we do when we're doing push hands, when we're just shifting from side to side. And this helps us use our structure in a certain way that we can then transmit to another person. So like in push hands, we can use our structure, we can use dynamic weightedness to just discombobulate someone else's structure. We can infect them, we can infect their structure with our structural movement and just put them off balance for a split second. And this is also a very important idea in each one that it was just very interesting. I was just reading a really good discussion of this in JP Lau, who I hadn't read before, but he gives a very good explanation of this idea of manipulating the opponent's sense of time. So here, when I teach, what we talk about is the idea of you create dead time in the opponent's movement by infecting them with your structural movement, and they go like that for a split second, and you hit them. And we do that with dynamic weightedness. So this is why I didn't want to explain it at this point. It needs a whole kind of video explanation in itself. But in essence, like when we're moving, when we're doing kind of spiral movements like that, we're just shifting between the weightedness of the movement like that, one way or the other, forwards and backwards, side to side. And that is linked into the rootedness of how we move. And I've talked about those ideas quite a lot, actually. I've held back from going into the deeper theory of it because you have to develop the skill before it starts making sense. most Yiquan teaching isn't really there to teach you how to do it. It's there just to reassure you that you're on the right path once you get there. That's what very often people don't get about like Wang Chengzhai's writing and Yao Zhongzhen's writing. It's not there to teach you. It's there so you know, that, right, okay, I know that. I am on the right path. So anyway, we're going to do some things like just moving forward. Oh, we're doing this, so forwards and backwards. So a good example, you can do this first like rocking forwards and backwards. And you can try, well, we are going to try it. So you try it with your eyes closed. You can actually fall over doing it like that. These tiny movements can have really, really big effects. But we want to do something more interesting. We want to use this idea of dynamic weightedness, so shifting from side to side like that in different patterns and this kind of figure of eight movement, but making it absolutely tiny, almost imperceptible. So, and that's going to link to what the arms are doing. So I can push forwards with my left arm and that roots all the way down into the right foot. So almost doing that, but it's imperceptible. It's like a little release force like that. That goes through this intentional arc into the hand. We've got to bear in mind all the time while we're doing it, keeping in mind the visualization of being in this kind of plaster cast. I think it's a lot easier to visualize yourself in a plaster cast than it is to visualize yourself as molten metal in a cast, which was never a visualization, but it was a metaphor used to get this idea across. So using this kind of dynamic weightedness just to shift your weight and play, and then circles. You can see if I really exaggerate the movement, you can see actually it's just what we do in Shili, but usually what we don't see is the use of the dynamic weightedness, even in the kind of slow movement, depending on the level of the practitioner. For the higher level practitioners, yes, of course you see it, but you might not be aware of it so much yourself because you've got to pay attention to what's happening in the legs. And this is an idea we'll talk about another time. It's a wushu saying that the movement formulates in the legs, it's governed by the waist and is expressed through the hands. And this is exactly this. This is what dynamic weightedness does. Movement doesn't really formulate in the legs, but the dynamic weightedness is like the foundation of the... If you do something like that, and then it's actually the waist, the quad area that does most of the work. But the dynamic weightedness underneath it is creating a kind of movement like if I do that and then stick my hand out, it's just that idea. But getting it down to a tiny, tiny little movement. So we're going to do some forwards and backwards. So shifting side to side like that if I do it big, like that. But we're going to do it in a micro movement, and circles, and also circles and through. So this is a key idea because we use it all the time in, like if we're doing push-ups, like circle and then switch back straight away. Again, this is one of the reasons why we need this kind of skill, because we need to be, we're going that way, and we use that somatic timing, lock point, somatic timing, hit back the other way. The opponent hasn't got enough speed to react to us in most cases, so we infect them with our structure, create a moment of dead time, and we're already hitting them because they can't go 1, 2. And even if they've got really good somatic timing, because it's kind of random when it happens, it's very hard to react to it in time. So that's what you see happening, for example, in really good push hands, is that people can react fast enough to your somatic timing. So these are the things we try to train in this posture. So bringing it up to the lock point in our standing, and practicing this so that we can shift backwards and forwards, and that's going to, if we want to shift one way then the other, create that moment of dead time, hit the opponent in that kind of dead zone where they're just discombobulated for a moment. I'm kind of rushing through that because I know that I talk about all of this in detail in the intermediate course, so I don't want to get too much into that. Yeah, it starts becoming a bit overwhelming, I know. All we need to know is that we need to try and catch this feeling of moving circles forwards and backwards. And we'll do some individual exercises, and we'll do some kind of randomized, and we'll do some like kind of slower, kind of smearing. So even though it will look like, it'll look like there's just like tiny movements within like I'm trapped in this cast, but in my mind I'm doing things like this, but we're reducing it to the size of movement you would have, and that visualization of the plaster cast is exactly the feeling we want of hitting the lock point in a micro movement. That's exactly the same feeling as hitting a lock point when we do somatic timing and then changing to another direction, which is the key skill we want, because that creates the split-second moment of dead time. It infects our opponent's structure, creates a moment of dead time where they're just pulled off balance, and that's when we hit. And this is the key idea within each one. Again, JP Lau writes about this quite interestingly, so I just read it today. I've never seen it before, but you can go and have a look at that. I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to say about what we're going to do. I'll see what we'll do at the time. I'll talk a bit through about, as ever, things that I'm feeling. And then, as ever, try and do the 40 minutes. If you can, great. If you can't, no worries. Just relax off for just move the body for 10 seconds, count for 10 seconds, and then go back into it. So again, the last thing I wanted to say was I've seen again someone saying like, oh, in our branch of Yiquan, like you don't stand for more than 5 minutes. In fact, you can't do. My teacher says if you do it for more than 5 minutes, you're doing it wrong. Right? All that means is that your teacher can't stand for more than 5 minutes. It's not like it's not an advancement on the theory. Yeah, okay, you could say like stand and tense as hard as you can for 5 minutes, then 5 minutes will be a very long time. Well, that's not what we're doing. So just be wary of all these things and all these making up stuff to cover the fact that they don't really do standing and they can't really do standing. Just be aware of all of that. You have to stand for a period of time, because the feeling that we're trying to get doesn't come until after a period of time. It's exactly the same thing as saying like, I want to get pins and needles in 10 seconds. Well, you can't. You can sit on your arm or something, but pins and needles is going to take a couple of minutes. It takes time before the body reacts to what's going on and what you do, before it gets that kind of locked feeling. And that is also called the lock point, because it's exactly the same thing. So when we hit and stop like that, it's the lock point. To get that feeling of being locked in your own structure takes time, and it can't just be got. Well, sometimes the feeling can come and happen in 5 minutes, but for the most part, and to develop and play with it, that's the other thing. Then you want to play with the feeling. The longer you can play with that feeling, the better. Up to a reasonable. Don't disregard your fight training that's building on top of that. Like Wang Shenjai says, this should only be like a third of your training. So yeah, that's enough waffle. So have a bit of a warm up, and then crack on, and then we'll do the standing. Let's go. So remember, for these first 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes, it's just about settling into the posture. So you're going to fidget a bit, muscles are going to relax, breathing's going to change. You're going to notice that you should have itched your nose just before you started. Doesn't make any difference really if you do, certainly not at the start. It doesn't make any difference at any point. So let's spend those 10-15 minutes and just relax into it. Now's the time to have a cough if you're having a cough. You're going to cough, you're going to fart, you're going to need the loo. Your throat's going to go inconveniently very dry. Oh, that means I shouldn't be talking then, so let's not. Well, and just adjust the dynamic of the legs. Just a little bit of a bend in it, but you want to be resting on your bones, as I said earlier. So just try and get that feeling right. So I can feel already, muscles just kind of letting go and relaxing. And that's when you get that little, they relax too much, so you just got to relax on your bones right. You may hear a bit of snoring in the background. My kid is here, he works nights. Oh, my knees just relaxed. You don't even notice the tension till it lets go. They're probably still tense, so they'll probably relax again. So I get that proper feeling that I'm just resting on my bones. So the buttock muscles are just starting to relax a little bit. That's when you start feeling it properly. So I had knee nearly pushed out then. Over relaxed. I love that deep breath moment. Like it's almost imperceptible. You can feel it. It's the first thing that happens usually straight away. Those muscles down the tops of your arms. And they just start feeling a little bit tense because they always just like, at first, overcommit to the posture. So it just starts burning a little bit of more oxygen. And that makes you take a deeper breath. And your breath goes a little bit, like we say, into the abdomen, but obviously it doesn't in reality, but that kind of thing. And I let my weight just shifted back infinitesimally then, but I felt it, because I'm still. I felt it like it was an immense movement, and I just shifted back to rest on my bones. And there again. Because it's such a fine balance, it's like it's almost impossible to keep it there all the time, so you kind of rock off it and on it. And the movement, like no one could see you even moving probably, but it feels enormous because you're still, you know. My right knee just relaxed even more, so it just shows you. It felt like it, I mean, I know it happens all the time, but it relaxed before and I thought, wow, it's relaxed. It's tensed up again now. My left knee is still tense. It's relaxed again. Come on, left knee. You get this effect called blinking, so my right knee's blinking a little bit like it's tensing and relaxing. It's nothing to do with level, it's to do with your existence within social reality. So I'm very stressed. I'm stressed about the news. Stressed about posturing charlatans on the internet. No, it shouldn't be. stressed about work, all of that just, it invades your body. And go, let it go, and try and let it all go. I love the sounds of the world outside passing by. Or we're in stillness. I love that. More dogs are getting involved. So now my dog's getting involved. He's starting to grumble. Dogs are stressed. So now I'm getting a very interesting thing that is very well known in standing. So I've had some work done on a tooth. Well, I've had some cosmetic work done on some charlatan dentist in the 1970s gave me these horrible fillings, so I'm having them replaced. It was a few weeks ago, but my tooth has just started hurting again where the work was done. And this is a very well-known phenomenon in standing, that old injuries start to hurt again, usually because they've not healed properly and you've just numbed your awareness of them. So it's probably that, just the brain cuts it out, like filters it out, and then in standing it just gets through the filter again, so that you can honour it and recognise the injury and then genuinely start to heal it. So that's interesting, it just starts to throb, just kind of randomly. Just got just like a little bit of tension in my left shoulder, right at the top and the front. A little bit of a sharpness. So I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to try and relax that off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to visualise the warm water is being poured over that part of my body, like ladles of warm water. And with each ladle of warm water, I'm going to try and make it relax a little bit more. Oh, my whole quad just moved back then on its own. Obviously not on its own. Like it was pushed back. Something going on with the muscles. Didn't feel any muscular contraction or anything, just the whole quad just moved back. And just corrected my posture a little bit, like it just moulded itself into bow more correctly. That's interesting. Micro adjustment, completely non-conscious. Knees still blinking a little bit, because they'll try and balance, your knees will try and balance you, they play such a key role in balancing you, particularly if your legs aren't completely straight, they're just bent slightly, like they should be. So sometimes they'll blink because they're overdoing it. So relaxed a bit more. The more you relax, the more you've got balance. My right knee just unscrunched into like an even deeper level of relaxation. It's just astonishing how we think we're relaxed when we're not. My left knee's still a little bit tighter, and also I'm getting just starting to get a little bit of pins and needles on the left, in my left arm, which is something that happens, and very interestingly, I mean, it happens to me all the time, usually on the left side, I get pins and needles, but I'll just stick with it, and it goes. So whatever's happening with the circulation corrects itself, which you would never, unless you did this kind of exercise, you would never know that that was possible for the body to do that. But it can. So we're 15 minutes in, so now it's time to start working with our first exercise. Remembering this idea that we're in this kind of cast. I used to say like an iron cast, but we said like a plaster cast over your whole body, like we discussed before. And now we just want to kind of start playing with the micro movement of forwards and backwards, and just you wake up in this cast and you're like, oh, what's this? And you just start trying to move. Just try to degrade that cast a little bit so that you can just move within it. Imagine little bits of the dust scraping off inside. My arm overreacted to the visualization. It's quite interesting. Just focus on that for a little bit. You can do it fast, you can do it slow, forwards and backwards. You can a little bit, like we said before, you can a little bit rock backwards and forwards on your axis, but that's not really what we want. Try and use your dynamic weightedness so that your figure of eight in a little bit imperceptibly, shifting between single and double weight to play with the movement and feel how much stronger that is, even from this position. How sophisticated that idea is. This is how you really get it. Really visualise yourself in that cast like it's over your face and everything, like in a movie. Buster Keaton full body plaster cast. I had a little pain in my bicep then, as if I was really pushing against something really there. Too much tension. For me, the feeling isn't strong enough yet. It's like I haven't stood long enough yet to fully get there. To get to the lock point, I haven't got there yet. I'll stand a little bit more in stillness. And what I'm doing is I'm just testing. Is the feeling there? So moving from the stillness and then just movement within stillness. It's not a mystical concept. You can feel it. Just trigger the intent to push forwards and pull back. Is that feeling of being locked in the cast there? Yeah, it's getting stronger now. You see why you stand, it's an incremental process to get that feeling. Something's happening in the body and the arms to build up to that feeling that we want. You ain't getting that after 5 minutes. So what I'm doing now is I'm using my dynamic weightedness to actually shift to single weight either side. You can't see it. So I'm pushing more with my left hand and rooting that with my right foot. So there's like an arc, an intentional arc from the left hand to the right foot. And I'm using that to push forward with my left hand, and I'm changing to my right hand, pushing the left foot. So I'm using single weightedness and then shifting between the two. And back to both together, but still using dynamic weightedness, shifting between single and double weight. I even see it a little bit in my movement. I'm not completely dead still. I'm doing a lot of work, internal work, real internal, in terms of movement inside my body. It's just a metaphor, It's the same muscles that move you if you do a big movement, but we've just reduced it to this tiny, tiny movement. Now I'm switching, so you can switch as well to do these circular movement left and right, spiral movements. That's quite fun. think like if you close your eyes, the sensation of the movement seems much bigger. It seems like an enormous movement. So your internal gyroscope is just visualising it as a bigger movement than it is. Just correct my feet a little bit of pain in my knee. Don't worry about just correcting the posture. Don't, recognise the different kinds of pain. If there's a strain there somewhere, you just need to adjust your posture, just do it. But if it's just a tension pain, you need to deal with that differently. So now I'm shifting between this idea Boji Akong talks about the circles and then push through the circle. It's a really important concept that we use for guard, engage and push hands. Little circles and then push through the circle and then back as well, so circle and pull back. Just like I discussed before. Play with that for a bit. Now I'm changing again, don't get caught in any one thing. Now I'm changing to just forwards and backwards. Now out and in. That feels that's a little bit more of an ask. That feels like it's more difficult than forwards and backwards today for some reason. Try and really feel what's going on in the legs. The movement formulating in the legs is a way of speaking. Feel like it links and integrates with the arms. It's not just standing, it's very dynamic, it's very active. And keep in mind this visualization all the time that you're in this cast. Don't lose that. Changes the quality of the movement. Don't just do the movement. So now I'm kind of randomizing between all of those things. That's what I'm going to work on. The only other thing I'm doing, which you can have a try at, is I'm sometimes just not actually lifting my toes up, but I'm putting more weight on the heel of one foot or the other. Just playing with that feeling. It helps train a little bit around how to set postures. So have a play, and you can fall backwards doing that, by the way. I'm not saying you can as in you should, but it's possible to, so just be careful. So just have a play with all of those now, in our remaining time. If you're starting to feel tension creep in now, now's the time to really focus on. Just relax off those arms. Just let go of that tension. Just imagine the cast is holding you up. My head's getting involved in the movement a bit. And a bit of chicken head. With my eyes closed, it feels like an enormous movement. You can see the entire, I can feel it in my fingers, my fingers are moving, so the intention in the fingers. It's one of the things that Wang Xiangjai talks about, the intention's got to bristle down right through into the fingertips, almost like it's projecting out from them, or from every part of the body in fact. He mentions fingertips particularly to distinguish from Tai Chi. I think I've talked about that before. Don't have the telly, focus on that. Shh. So now I'm working with my much slower patterns, figures of eights and forwards and backwards, side to side, these kind of smearing patterns. My left arm feels like much tenser than my right arm. So usually I have it the other way around because I'm left-handed. That's strange. I had that thing then that Yao Zhongzong talks about, that it's almost like a psychosis, that you think your limb is in a really odd place. It's a well-known phenomenon, I don't know why it happens. It's there just exactly where you left it. So my mind, the movements I'm doing are massive, but they don't look like that. Big deep breath, less than a minute to go. Just really make the most of the last minute, really get that feeling. Really randomise everything, shift with your dynamic weightedness. Not long to go. A few seconds, that's it. Okay, relax. We can change to this. When you're finishing, don't think we've done before. Use mine Shaolin zhuang, which is my background. And then this nice posture, which feels lovely after standing, just relaxing off a little bit. Everyone's still going on outside, dogs are still walking, life goes on, news is still horrific. And then again, just relax a little bit off. Hey, well done. Remember when you couldn't do 10 minutes? I remember when I couldn't do 2 minutes. So if you did all of that, 40 minutes, that's fantastic. That's as far as we want to go in this beginner series. 40 minutes, Wang Xiangzhai's basic recommendation. 40 minutes, if you've done it, that's wonderful, well done. I mean, and if you've done it along with me and I've helped you get to this point, at this point, drop me a line. Oh, stretch off. And this Tai Chi, Chen Tai Chi posture. Well, I hope you managed to feel some of those feelings while we were standing and really get the feeling. I have to say, I didn't completely get it this time, and that's perfectly no. Sometimes you can stand for like 15 minutes and you get, really, really that intense feeling of being into the lock point. And sometimes you can stand for like 40 minutes, an hour, and it's just not quite there. It wasn't quite there for me this time, but it's an organic practice. I think a big part of that is because I was talking loads, so it was very difficult for me to focus on the visualization. You've got to get deep into the visualization to really kind of elucidate that feeling, or elicit, I think is the word I'm looking for. Come on, Doc, elicit that feeling. That's the learning curve, isn't it? We can't, like doing it with me, I can't talk, you can't listen to me, we can't really get fully into it, but we can go away and practice and try and get that. And if you have to take a few breaks, as ever, what does it matter, really? You're building up step by step. The most important thing is to know that it can be done and that people are doing it, and that it's not torture, you just build up step by step. So I hope that was really useful, and I'll see you in the next one. One love.